Everyone's entitled to one good scare at Halloween, but what constitutes one good scare is extremely variable from person to person. We've all got different thresholds. And I think there hasn't always been enough scary, fun writing out there for younger readers, because it's a very difficult balancing act. You've got to get something that is scary enough without being too scary. Something that is scary enough to grab your attention, but not so scary that your parents won't let you read it. It hasn't always been this way. When I was a kid, children's horror was a huge, huge industry. Ask anyone who was alive and paying attention in the 90s, and they will tell you that Goosebumps was everywhere. But it wasn't just Goosebumps. There's a lot of really good quality, fun, spooky, Halloween-y content out there for kids. And I would like to share a couple spooky classics of my youth. These are books that I would recommend wholeheartedly to young people today who want a good scare, but also I think that the right kind of adult would still get a lot of enjoyment out of them. Starting this list off strong, we've got The Scary Stories Treasury by Alvin Schwartz with illustrations by Stephen Gammell. So this was originally published as 3 paperback volumes. They were Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, More Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, and Scary Stories 3, More Tales to Chill Your Bones! This was the book that parents groups would try to get removed from the school library because they were, I don't know, worried it was satanic or something. It's a collection of ghost stories from folklore, mostly from the United States in the early 20th century and sometimes 19th century as well. And it's kind of a greatest hits of folklore. You've got all the classics in here. You've got the guy with the hook for a hand. You've got the babysitter who's getting scary phone calls. You've got the guy who keeps flashing his high beams. It's all in here. And it's very well told, I think, by Alvin Schwartz. Although the thing that most people remember, and probably the reason that it was such a challenged book, is Stephen Gammell's art, which is honestly, I think, some of the best horror art of all time. Check out this one. This is my favorite. Now, some of these stories can get a little bit repetitive. A lot of them are kind of variations on the same theme, and reading them one after another, you can start to feel like, I've read this one already. So not every story in here is a winner, and because a lot of them are coming from folklore of the mid-20th century and earlier, some of them may feel a bit dated, and I don't just mean that a few of them are racially a little questionable, but also some of it is reliant on older technology. Like I mentioned a minute ago, a story where a babysitter's getting scary phone calls, and that story, for it to work, kind of relies on landlines, which are what we had before everyone had a cell phone in their pocket. But if there's one thing I've learned from creepypasta and this new analog horror moment, it's that old and obsolete technology can still be kind of scary in its own right. This book isn't perfect, it does have its flaws, but it is nonetheless a real classic, and there is a reason that it is remembered so fondly. And so I won't say too much more about it, because I am far from the first millennial to talk about this book on the internet, so let's go with a slightly deeper cut for the next one. I've lost the dust jacket for this one, but this is Spooky Stories for a Dark and Stormy Night. Similar title, different book. This was compiled and edited by Alice Lowe with illustrations by Gahan Wilson, and it's also mostly a compilation of folk tales, but they're a little bit less familiar, less obvious, and also pretty broad scope in terms of where they're coming from. There's a Scottish ghost story in here, there's a Chinese boogeyman story, there's a Russian legend about a child encountering the Baba Yaga, there is a Norwegian story about trolls, there's a spooky Hanukkah story, there's a couple of rural African American legends about monsters and evil wizards. There's also some original fiction in here, and some retellings of classic literary ghost stories like The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, for example. It's all a lot of fun. There's one in here in particular, it's called I'm Coming Up the Stairs, that genuinely creeped me out, honestly, when I first read it. I'd also like to say a few words about the art in this book. Gahan Wilson was probably best known as an illustrator for The New Yorker, so his art style is a lot more kind of goofy than the fog-shrouded, inky nightmares that Stephen Gammell was doing. Check out these very comedic-looking ghosts. But I think there is still something kind of unsettling about it. Now, so far I've been talking about straight prose fiction, but you know what else is great? Poetry. Specifically, scary poetry. And have I got a book of scary poems for you? This is Scary Poems for Rotten Kids by Shauna Huygen, with illustrations by John Fraser and Scott Hughes. Now, when I was a rotten kid, I was actually more familiar with this book through a CD-ROM than a physical copy of it. Back in the 90s, there was this thing where you could get a lot of kids' books as a computer program, basically, and you could click through the book. It was narrated. It was a little bit like an early version of ebooks. So these are all fun, creepy poems about kids encountering monsters and horrible things like that, and they don't always make it out alive. And a few of these did genuinely frighten me when I was a kid. The ones that left the biggest impact on me are probably The Thing and I, in which a boy is woken from his sleep by this horrible blob monster. The Day the Mosquitoes Ate Angela Jane, which is exactly what you think it is. And there's one called Acid Rain in here that is just nasty. The art is all pretty good. I think it does a good job of showing kind of implying something creepy without actually needing to get too gruesome. You're not going to lose your lunch, but you will get a little shiver down your spine. And as you can see, this isn't a very long book. You can read the whole thing in a single sitting. If you dare. I've been talking a little bit about scary folklore over the past few minutes, and maybe it's the folklore side that you're really interested in. And to that end, I would recommend this book. This is Railway Ghosts and Highway Horrors by Daniel Cohen. I used to read a lot of this guy when I was younger. He does a lot of books about like cryptids and dinosaurs and really cool things like that. And I always thought he did a good job of writing in a way that was kind of analytical, very well researched and informative, but never felt condescending. It never felt like he was talking down to you, which, you know, when I was younger, I really appreciated, and I guess I still do. I mean, everyone deserves content that respects their intelligence, right? So this is a book about all the ghost stories and horror stories and urban legends and folklore that come up around transportation, specifically trains and automobiles. Most of this is from the United States, some of it from the UK as well. Ghost trains, ghostly hitchhikers, regular hitchhikers getting lifts from truck drivers who are ghosts, urban legends, and of course, roadside encounters with your friend and mine, Mothman. One or two of the stories in here do also turn up in Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, so there is a bit of overlap, but they're different tellings of the same story, so it doesn't feel too redundant. And Cohen also goes quite a bit into where these stories come from, how they spread, so if you're interested in learning more about folklore as a concept, this is a really good place to start. It's not necessarily as scary, but it is very interesting. But on the other hand, there is a ghostly hitchhiker story in here that is very scary indeed. The art in this book is certainly not up to the Stephen Gammell level, but this is some pretty cool, spooky charcoal work, right? Now, if you want to lean even further into the non-fiction study of folklore angle, this is a terrific book. This is Mysteries of the Unknown from Usborne Books. And again, this is actually a collection of 3 smaller books, which are All About Monsters, which was written by Carey Miller, All About Ghosts by Christopher Maynard, and All About UFOs by Ted Wilding White. And each one is a dive into a different, weird and spooky subject. The monsters part gives you a look at ancient mythological monsters, medieval dragon folklore, the real monsters that were the dinosaurs, and also the cryptid that turned out to be real, the giant squid. You got sea serpents, you got Nessie, you got Sasquatch, you got the Yeti, and there's also a nice little spread here on movie monsters like King Kong, Mechanicong, Shark from Jaws, Godzilla. It's all a lot of fun. The ghosts bit is probably the most Halloween-y, the most spooky in here. It talks about ghost sightings throughout history, folklore of what to do about a ghost, haunted places, ghosts of the sea, non-human ghosts. This is one of my favorite spreads in the book, like Black Shuck and Jeff the Mongoose. There's this marvelous tour of everything you might find in a haunted house, all these common phenomena associated with hauntings. There's a tour of the most haunted village in England. ghosts around the world, and there's some stuff in here on the process of ghost hunting and more rational and skeptical explanations for a lot of these sightings. And then we get into the UFO book, which talks about UFO sightings throughout history. There's some ancient alien stuff in here, some real-life aircraft, experimental aircraft that might have been responsible for some of these sightings, and it talks a little bit about other possible explanations. Now, if I'm honest, this book does get a little bit less interesting the further on it goes. I think the monster part is solid gold. The ghost stuff starts out very strong, but once it gets into the stuff about ghost hunting and possible explanations for it, it loses me a little. And the UFO part, you know, you can only read so many someone saw some flying lights in the sky and it turned out to be nothing stories before they start to feel a little samey. Reading about dragons and dinosaurs is just more interesting to me than reading about psychic research in the 1970s and looking at drawings of weird spaceships. And sometimes the writing does take on a tone that is a little bit credulous for my taste, especially in the later parts of the book. But the art is honestly terrific throughout. Osborne had a big stable of artists working on this book, so there's no one person I can credit, but all of it's great. I've shown you a few spreads already. And part of this is just the fact that I was exposed to this book from a very young age, but a lot of these images are just burned into my brain. When I picture Medusa, I'm picturing that Medusa. When I picture the ghost of a pirate, I'm picturing this guy. Even though he isn't actually a pirate according to this story here, he looks like he should be, right? This book touches on so many wonderful, weird little stories that, despite its flaws, I have to wholeheartedly recommend it to anyone who is interested in spooky folklore, ghost stories, cryptids, things like that. It's a classic. It's a must-read. So that is my list of spooky books from my youth that I think kids today would enjoy. For now, at least. Like I say, there probably isn't enough spooky content aimed at kids, but that doesn't mean there isn't any. So thank you for listening to a geriatric millennial ramble about his youth, and thank you for being you.